Hi, it was a wonderful opportunity to share a little bit of my journey earlier this morning. And as part of that, I mentioned that I've been working with depression and anxiety recovery program. It's a program that's run by Dr. Neil Nedley, who is an internal medicine specialist. We don't tend to use that title here in Australia, but he's from the US. It means that he operates from here to here generally, and works out of Loma Linda in the US. And one of the things he was finding many years ago was that a lot of the things he was trying to do with what's happening in our digestion or in our respiratory systems were related to what's going on in our minds, and that the two were intrinsically linked. So he embarked on a series of research studies to see what was found around the world in terms of non-medicated interventions was proven to be the most successful with depression and anxiety, which were the two things he was seeing more and more of. And this program was put together then on that basis of what was scientifically proven as successful interventions from around the world into the one program. And it's why it's been so successful. The program enjoys between an 80 and 90%, sometimes we even have higher recovery rate for people who actually are experiencing severe depression or anxiety in terms of being better than they have ever can remember often being. So I wanted to share with you just a little bit, and then I'll show you a mini clip as a testimony, and then come back and explain some more about how depression and anxiety works and why medication and why psychology and psychiatry struggle to do any more than bring people to a point where they are coping with life. They're not thriving, they're not living life to the full, they're just able to cope. And even that falls away at times and people go off. And I think there'll be a fair amount of light bulbs go on when that happens. So I alluded in my testimony that as Christians or as people who are professionals out in the workforce, we put a mask on, that everything's okay. But when our mental health is really struggling, there's a whole lot of turmoil going on inside. And therefore, we might have a smile on the outside, but inside, the sad face is truly where we are. But we're unable, in our culture especially, and often in our own circles, to be able to talk about that freely, because with it comes a stigma. With it becomes people go, oh, you go, oh, or equally, I shouldn't be like that. Why am I like that? And it's, it shouldn't be happening to me. So you'll see that depression and high anxiety have a constellation of symptoms. Many people think that it's just about feeling sad. But as you can see on the screen there, and you two might want to come around just so you can see the screen a little more, you can see that it's varying about what people are actually seeing, from feeling energyless, listless, having an apathy, no wish to actually get involved in anything, being hypercritical or negative, to being fatigued, agitated, can be extreme weight loss or weight gain. When I had my episode of depression, I lost many, many kilos. In fact, I was about 5 belt sizes lower than what I had when I was actually there. But many people put on weight because we often do things to cope, and sometimes eating, drinking, all sorts of things can be a way to mask the pain of what's going on and bring some normality back. And you can see right through to considering self-harm or suicide as part of it. The brain is one of the most amazing things that medical science is now coming to understand. And the most complex organ that we have in our body in terms of the types of nerve endings that are in there is our heart muscle tissue and our liver tissues. They have somewhere between 12 and 24 different nerve endings and types of nerves that are in that system. The brain has thousands, which all have a different style, a different purpose, and a different function. And this is a bit of a busy slide, but essentially what happens when a thought comes into our brain is it has to pass down an electrical pathway, a bit like what supplies the lights that we've got here. It's the electricity going through a cable and it actually creates the light. Each one of those thoughts, nerve pulses, has to jump over a synapse. It's just like this picture. It's a gap between one nerve ending and the other. And for that gap to be transformed, for that nerve impulse to go across there effectively, requires some things called neurotransmitters. Dopamine, serotonin are a few of them. You will have heard those terms used around the place. They are part of that neurotransmitters, and they get made by what we eat. And when we're depressed or anxious, they get depleted. So I often give the example that it's a bit like trying to run your car on 2 cylinders if it's a 6-cylinder. Or it's a bit like running it on the wrong fuel as how it actually works. It's with that level of complexity, with thousands and billions of nerve endings in there, it's no wonder that something can go wrong. It just makes sense. How much things go wrong with a car, and it's much simpler than what our brain is. Do you realize that 1/7 of the entire blood supply in our body gets used by the brain? It's 10 times the amount for any other part in our body. However, what happens is that, when we're under depression or severe anxiety, the blood flow gets reduced. Remember, 1/7 of the total blood goes to the brain, 10 times any other organ in the body. This is what someone who is depressed, a scan of their brain looks like. A PET scan basically takes a scan that picks up electrical connectivity, so that those electrical impulses that I talked about going on in our brain, there's a few dots. That's what it should look like when we're healthy. That's why when people say, just think happy thoughts, get over it, toughen up, have a positive attitude, it's not going to work. Because physiologically, the brain is being starved of its blood supply. And what does blood supply bring? Oxygen, nutrition, all those neurotransmitters. If that's depleted, because what happens when people are in a highly anxious state for a prolonged period, in grief and loss for a prolonged period, or in depression, is that the blood gets transferred back here, which is the area of your brain that deals with fight and flight, self-preservation. It's the area that makes little ladies able to rip the door off of a car to get to a child when there's a fire in the car, or when they're in a car accident, you know. So our brain is basically going into self-preservation. You know how when you get a computer and it has a malfunction and it says safe mode on the screen, all right? And it shuts it down to just operating on the core functions to keep it alive, so that whatever virus or whatever's happened to your system doesn't infect the whole system. Our brains do the same thing. They shut down for self-preservation. And that's why you can't remember things. This frontal lobe area of your brain controls emotion. It controls reasoning. It controls your ability to prioritize. It controls your ability to make decisions. What gets lost in depression and anxiety? Those things. Because the frontal lobe is being shut down and suppressed. So, what I want to show you now So I want to show you a little clip. That's it. Which was a testimony recorded from a person who came to our program a little while ago. You should ignore the dates on here because that was our last program last year. We'll be running again in July this year, similar time. And this person's name is Scott, and I'd just like you to enjoy his story to see how life transforming the depression anxiety program will be, and then I can go into why it works. Okay? Scott, wonderful you could come in and share a little bit of your story, and I just wonder if you could take us back a little bit on the journey of what life was like before you came to the depression and anxiety recovery program.
I couldn't think clear. I couldn't concentrate. I got to a stage where, through self-medication, just to make myself feel a bit better, I indulged in food, just eating and eating and eating. I literally ate my days away, to the extent that I ended up weighing 185 kilograms. In fact, it's because of the depression and the impact of the overeating, a lot of other aspects in my health, to the extent that I ended up with type 2 diabetes. I had high cholesterol and high blood pressure. I basically had failure, starting off failure with the kidneys, the pancreas and the liver. I couldn't control the blood pressure anymore through medication. That was from my GP.
Doctors must have been pretty scared of where you were at that stage.
They pretty much warned me that there is no other way out than you're going to die. There just isn't anything else that they can do. So that was something that sat in my mind for a little while. To give you an idea, I had to take 17 prescription medication tablets every day just to get through one single day.
So roll forward after completing your program, what's life like now? What's different? I mean, I can see some physical changes.
Life is completely different. Life is back again, where I had no life beforehand. I guess the most physical thing from a weight loss perspective, I've lost 105 kilograms of excess weight.
That's an amazing amount.
It's an amazing amount, and that's just through controlling my life.
So the eating is no longer what to get rid of the pain and get rid of make you feel okay anymore.
Exactly.
What's been replaced? You know, food was that crutch before. What's there now?
I think to a great extent just logical thinking, acknowledging that what I was thinking before was not right. It wasn't correct thoughts. I believed it at that point in time, but it just wasn't right.
And you still have 17 medications every day?
No, to be honest with you, I'm on one tablet that I use for reflux.
That's amazing.
To drop down. I don't have any form of diabetes anymore. My blood pressure and cholesterol is back to normal. My pancreas, my kidneys and liver is functioning normal. I've got my life back.
What did your doctor say?
It wasn't honest. It wasn't very important to him. He just couldn't believe that something like that would be possible.
Remember you coming along on that first night to the introductory session, and what gave you the inspiration to say life can be different?
I think the main thing for me was the way I was welcomed. The fact that I saw a lot of people are actually in similar boats than I was. I wasn't alone. There was a huge group of people who struggled with similar type of issues, the same as what I struggled with. And also the discussions that I had with facilitators just before we went in, just discovering that, well, a lot of them actually went through exactly the same things that I'm actually struggling with right now. So I'm not talking to people who just be reading a book. I'm actually talking to people.
It's not the university graduate at the end of a desk.
Indeed, it's definitely not. Each person has been there, and that definitely motivated me to continue with the course.
Pretty amazing testimony, isn't it? We regularly have those testimonies continually throughout the program, and it's so lovely to have, people come up to you at the end of a program and say, thank you, you've given our partner, our wife, our husband, our mum or dad back to us. We lost them. It's just one of the beautiful things that is there in that reward. So as you can see, people have different masks. Scott's was food, different ways of coping. Some people turn to alcohol, some people turn to even prescription medication. Other people turn to overwork. There's just ways of actually coping with the pain, with the loss that's there. But as we can see, there's a physiological reason that's actually happened. The reason why programs don't necessarily address this as well as the depression recovery program does is because you need to deal with the different hits. Most people, Dr. Nedley's grouped all of the reasons that depression and anxiety occur into 10 hit categories, as he calls them, and you generally require 3 to 4 of these for the mind to actually go into that shutdown mode or to experience that. I won't go through them because of the time we've got here at the moment, but you can see that we are incredibly resilient normally, but our resilience breaks down. And when we get hit by the things that happen in life, it may have been our upbringing, it may have been coming from a family where there wasn't love, or a family that actually had abuse in the family, and encountering that. We can't alter the family upbringing that we have, but we can alter the other things that cause the depression and anxiety, the other hit categories. And that's what we learn about in the program. So the first 4 weeks of our program are about getting physiologically back the ability to think and to sleep, because many people have lost the ability to sleep. They're either oversleeping or undersleeping, and many times we talk to people who it's been years since they've actually had a restful night's sleep. And it's fantastic to see that by week 5, week 6, something like that, they're going, I had my first good night's sleep and I've slept the whole week. It's just so good to have that back now. So our first 4 nights are based on getting physical wellness back, restoring that blood supply to the frontal lobe. You put someone's blood under a slide and look at it in the microscope. Esther would be able to show you that, I'm sure, who's depressed or anxious, and the blood is really sticky. You actually have a look at someone who's functioning well, and it's quite thin and viscous. Tells you something. If the blood's got to get through to all those fine little brain cells and little nerve pathways that are there, the glia and such, and it's really thick and sticky, it's not going to work real well. So that's why we focus on getting those things there. In the latter part of our program, so it's an 8-week program, 1 night a week, we actually go through our thinking. Remember Scott said, what was the most life-changing thing? I learnt that what my mind was telling me wasn't necessarily true. I thought it was at the time, but now I understand it wasn't. And that's where psychologists work. So psychologists, and some of you will have worked with them in the past, will actually help you with your thinking and trying to get your thinking. They might be doing cognitive behavior therapy or ACT therapy. And they're all really good, but why don't they work on an ongoing basis? because physiologically you haven't got the blood supply back to be able to think things through clearly, put the activities in practice that they're teaching you. Whereas we will do them in a supported environment, in a small group that's comfortable and confidential, after that blood flow has been restored, after the brain's able to cope and think. And that's why it's such a successful program. Just one intervention here, just your flaxseed, or your linseed as it's sometimes marketed as, which is your highest in omega-3, one of the major components for creating those neurotransmitters, has a higher impact on lifting mood and curing depression and anxiety than any medication on the market. Just one. So when you combine all of the things that we learn about the foods, about getting your exercise, getting the water in to actually creating the mind to lift, sunshine for your serotonin and melatonin to get created to be able to sleep, because they're your sleep chemicals, then people are able to think. And that's why in week 5 and 6 they go, I'm starting to feel better than I ever have for such a long time. I'm starting to be able to think clearly, and I'm seeing things differently. I'm not as negative as I used to be. We measure our scores on, we take a instrument called the Depression and Anxiety Stress Scale, so a DAS scale. It's what the psychologists use. If you go to a psychologist, they will use this instrument most likely. It's the common one that Australia is recognised and uses for psychiatrists and psychologists to measure your scale. These are some of our results when they come to before and after the program. 45, which you can see for depression, is basically suicidal, that it is incredibly depressed. And even 24s and 25s, that's going to be finding it difficult to hold down work, finding it difficult to hold down relationships. And you can see they've gone down to 6, 0, 6, 10, 14 minimal scores over the length of our program, because we measure at the beginning and at the end. Anxiety scores. This is your people who've been struggling with anxiety as opposed to depression, and you often have both. You can see the same. And this is just one set of scores from one group. These get replicated every time we have a session. What does it look like at the end? Well, I think we could all say that that's a pretty good list of feeling well and healthy compared to the list before. What do you think? And that's what people experience if they put the effort in to put the strategies in. There's no one who's ever attended our programs that hasn't been better than they can remember feeling for a long, long time, that they've got their life back. How does the program work? So it's an 8-week program. We meet one night a week for from 7 till 9. That'll either be a Monday or a Tuesday night when we decide on the timing. And then we have support out to 20 weeks for those who would like to have the extra support. By week 8, you're going to be feeling better than you can remember, but you're not resilient. You know, if life comes along and knocks you off with something that goes wrong, again, you're not going to be the point where you can bounce back quickly. The other thing is it takes 20 weeks to lay down new habits that are stronger in our brain, where the neural pathways are stronger than what the old habit pathways are. So physiologically, 20 weeks is a major milestone for resilience, for having stronger habits than what they were before. Okay. So we would love to actually have people come. The problem is that depression and anxiety take away one thing, and that is the ability to have hope that life could be any different. the ability to initiate something, to say yes. So coming to a program is a major hurdle. You know, if we said there's a magic pill that can cure you, we'd have cures out to the door, you know, and down the street 5 ways. But we know people get better. The best you're going to get on any medication, any psychiatrist, any psychologist, is about 50% improvement to where you were statistically. Some people can get a full cure, but it's unusual to actually get that full cure, whereas this program can actually give that full wellness. And you know how to prevent it if you're dropping off in future. So what's your roles? Some of you may be looking at this presentation or here at the moment and say, I know someone, or I could benefit from that. I would like a safe group where the person that I love or that I could come into confidentially can have that support. In our small groups, it's not like where we sit down and we actually go, tell us your problem and I'll tell you mine. It's about where we encourage each other to practice the things we're learning each week, put them in place, and then share where we succeeded or where we still might need some extra help. That's a very different model and a very supportive model. It's a comfortable model. But the most powerful thing is if someone says to you, I'll go with you. Come with me and attend. Because if you come and attend even just so you can know about this, gain the knowledge to support someone who may not even be ready to come yet, then you'll be making a major change in life. And you will view depression and anxiety differently. But if you can just say, come with me each week, they're going to come. Because the hardest thing will be to think and have hope that life can be different when it has been so dark for such a long time. So I'd love to encourage you. We will start our next program in July. Ignore that because I didn't manage to change the slide in time that says October at Park Ridge. People often ask, is it a religious program? And we say, it's not a religious program, it's a community health program that we're running. However, we, like Alcoholics Anonymous, know that we get better results if there is a higher power that you actually work with, whatever your view of that higher power is. And therefore, we don't hide that, but if that's not your thing and that's not where you're at, then you just tune out for the bits where we actually talk about that. Because we want you to get well and you come and experience the rest of the program. And people do, all right? We haven't had anyone who's found that offensive in any way. So families, we would love to see people come. The total cost of the program is purely the recovery of the books cost and the food. A little bit for advertising. Everyone's voluntary on this project, on this program. And as was mentioned in the video, many of our facilitators have been through the program and have now believed in it so much that they want to give back and they want to help others. And that's pretty well the best recommendation you can get as well. So I have got other testimonies. I won't take the time now to show them. I'm happy to share a little bit later, but I'll just open up for questions if anyone's got any questions they'd like to ask.
What does the 12 weeks of follow-up after the 8 weeks look like?
Yeah, so we meet at week 10, 13, 17, and then week 20 is our graduation and celebration. So we're spacing them out so people have got time in between to see how they're traveling, but then they've got the support. And at each one of those, we'll focus again on an area that people might be needing some extra of, or some extra support in to actually get through. And a lot of people really value it. The other thing that's happened a lot of times And why this is so important is because many people lose their friends, and they lose people who understand, because people just don't understand. And sometimes you're hard to be around if you're completely down and you're negative all the time. So in this program, you'll make friendships, and you'll actually feel that friendship, and you'll feel that sense of I belong. And that's why people also continue to come back, is because they're part of a supportive family. Other questions? Other comments? All right, well, we'd just like to encourage you to think about who you might like to give the greatest gift you could give to. It'll cost you maybe your time to come with them or to encourage them, but if you could give someone their life back, and you can have someone who actually says, I feel better than I can remember, then that's a pretty good reward. So thank you, everyone.